you going to keep that? It's a cool looking set, by the way.
You like it?
Yeah.
Thanks. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if this will just be like a special edition set.
Do it for the playoff preview and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I might leave it. I mean, I'm not taking it down. It's in the basement. It's gonna be here.
Or you could just do the playoffs in general from there.
Yeah, maybe like the playoffs, different things. I like it. I mean, I do like it a lot. This TV, I'm gonna have. I tried. I ran out of time today, but I'm gonna be able to put up pictures back there of players we're talking about. That was my idea, was to have like a photo thing that goes back there when we're discussing something. And it worked well for Julie and I because we could both work from this table.
Did you cut those out, or did you have those specially made?
No, they're just letters you can buy. Like
okay.
I bought all those letters, and in my wisdom, I'll show you what I did. It's pretty funny.
The monitor almost got knocked over.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. All right, I see. Yeah, I'm still learning my spatial relations back here. Sorry. This in my wisdom, I just for some reason came home with an extra H. I have no idea why. I bought them letters.
Hockey bug.
I know. I don't know why I have another H, but today's HockeyBuzzCast is brought to you by the letter. So yes, a rogue H. So yes, we're here. How are you guys? How you doing, everybody?
All right, let's do it. Let's talk what happened today.
Let's talk trade deadline recap.
Yes, the day after.
I think my camera looked like it's too high in the sky, like I'm talking to people in the sky. Hello, how are you doing?
No, it looks great.
That's fine.
That's good. All right, cool. Because I feel like it's way above my head.
You look like your set too could be on the set of Mad Men. You know how they all have the beautiful colors and the.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
I know it's a little bit. I could definitely make it better. I tried to.
It looks like a 70s TV.
That's what I think. Yeah.
Broadcast.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Mad Men. I mean, it's a little later, but if you had a lime green shirt.
Yeah.
I can do that. That's what I wore yesterday.
Yeah, he had sort of the Miami Vice big collar. It was like.
Yeah. I did. I had the lime green shirt yesterday. It's pretty funny. All right. Yeah. Awesome. All right, here we go. The date is
Tuesday, March 3rd.
Tuesday, March 3rd, of course, because this is my son's birthday.
Oh.
Happy birthday.
And Josh's daughter's birthday, right?
Yep.
Yep. So Josh's daughter, my son. Yep. My son is 10 today.
Wow.
7.
So we're going to my son's favorite place for dinner tonight, which is Benihana.
Oh. Okay.
I'm a big fan of the Benihana. I will say this though about Benihana. A little quick rant, just a real fast one before we get into hockey. Fix some screen.
The Wolf on Wall Street isn't a big fan of Benihana.
All right, now Benihana is awesome, and a lot of people have been to Benihanas or Benihana-like places, which is like this is a hibachi place where a guy makes your food in front of you, and it's really good, it's yummy, but they have these jokes that they do that are the same jokes every time you go to a Benihana, like they roll an egg across, and they're like an egg roll, ha ha ha, that kind of thing, and there's all these corny Benihana jokes, right? And I just want so much for someone to invent new Benihana jokes. I want to go in there with a list of things, say, you know what, we think it's hilarious the stuff you do, but here's a whole list of new food-related Benihana jokes. So that's my task for everybody out there. Send them to me. I will personally make sure.
Can we write some new material for Southwest Airlines too?
Yeah, right. No, exactly. I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, these are funny, but my favorite thing to do on Southwest Airlines is this. I do it every time I land. I turn to the person I'm next to, and I'm like, I want to be the first to welcome you to Philadelphia. No matter if I'm sitting by myself or if I'm with my wife or whatever, because the first thing they'll say is when they land is, on behalf of Southwest Airlines, we'd like to be the first to welcome you to Philadelphia. I'm like, ha! I got you. I was the first to welcome this person next to me to Philadelphia. Just, some might call it petty. Sorry. That went over really well.
Who sound effects are those?
Here we go. Ready? Have I lost you completely?
I'm with you.
Thank God. No response to my joke. Here we go. March 3rd. Smiles, everyone. Hello, Hockey World. It's Tuesday, March 3rd, 2015.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Kevin Allen of USA Today Sports.
I'm Josh Rimmer.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzCast. HockeyBuzzCast on HockeyBuzz.com. Coming to you from the set of our trade deadline show. Just thought I didn't have the time to set up the other set. Basically, is what it came down to. But we're still here. But this will probably just be a set for special occasions. But what more special occasion could there be? And on the set, I can really raise my arms far apart and get like more. What better special occasion could there be than to welcome back Kevin Allen, who was sorely missed for our 6-hour show yesterday, and get his opinions on the trade deadline, as you saw it, Kevin, in 30 seconds or less.
Applause. I enjoy that. So yeah, I miss being on. I mean, I got a chance, to obviously on my blog we wrote up my analysis, but I'm so used to talking now every day that it was really odd, because I don't really even do radio shows on trade deadline day because there's so much going on. So it was an interesting day to say the least.
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, I thought it was. People were saying it was. I think from our perspective, it was better than most trade deadlines because we had a lot to talk about to start the show. Like there was no lack of things. Like sometimes you get in there and you're just waiting for the first 2 hours and you're what to talk about. But since all these trades happened, and I do want to talk today about the winners of and how we define winners in trade deadline, which I think is a whole other story. Because I was trying to write a winners blog, I was thinking, how the hell do we define winners?
Was I missed it all, that?
What was that?
I said, was I missed it all?
Oh yes, Josh. Of course you were missed.
Okay.
No, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to not welcome you back.
That's fine.
Gee, I feel like a heel. All right. Thanks, man. Totally.
Oh, that's it.
Good night, everyone. No.
You'll be
Josh,
your own.
you were missed horribly. There were at least 2 or 3 times where we had a best of Josh montage that we played in the show. Just like brief moments of you drinking, of coughing, sneezing.
Hey, I haven't coughed in a while.
How about the Halloween the Halloween fun house would be a nice.
Right, that's definitely the best with the bodies being chopped and the screams from next door.
Yeah.
There you go. There's the cough.
That was awesome stuff. There's the cough, and of course, there's nothing better than your intros in the beginning of the show to bring a crowd to its feet. So yeah, you were not missed as much. Maybe that's why. But all right, let's start here.
Oh well.
All right, let's define winners and losers, okay? Because this is everyone wants to do trade deadlines, winners and losers. So how I did it in my blog today, for those of you who read it, I'm sure none of you did. It was this. None of the 3 of you. I mean, hopefully some of you out there did, because you're in this blog right now watching the show. It's just the words above this screen. But yeah, so what I thought is you have winners of the battle and winners of the war, right? And to me, there's a battle and there's a war. And the winners of the battle are teams that are going for it. These are teams that are, and then winners of the war are teams that might win down the line, but we don't know until we see what they do with their draft picks and all that stuff. And what was really fascinating to me is I do this every year. I do the same exact thing: winners, battles and wars. And I separate the teams into 3 categories: teams that believe they have a chance at winning the Stanley Cup, so that's why they're going for it; teams that just are absolutely, they might still make the playoffs, but are kind of throwing the towel in and saying, if we make the playoffs, we'll make the playoffs, but we'd really rather be this. And then teams in the middle who are usually, maybe they don't do anything, maybe they're buyers and sellers a little bit. This is the first year I could only find 2 of the teams in the middle. And that was very, really hard to do. I think I was even stretching on one of them. I felt Florida was a team in the middle because they did buy Yager, and yet they sold Fleischmann and Bergenheim. And they're trying to make the playoffs, obviously, still. But they probably don't think a win for them would be to get into the playoffs and maybe even win around. That would be a big win for them, right? And Calgary, who seems like because of what happened with their defense, decided to not do anything really much of anything either. So. But there were 20. I came up with 20 teams that felt like they could win it all, and this was the most I'd ever. When I thought about it, actually, these are the teams that really felt like, or at least have a really good shot, at win. And I think that's what's different about this deadline, Kevin. To me, is there's a lot of teams that legitimately, could win this, and in the East you can make any team can make the finals, so you can take all of the teams there, and So what are your thoughts, Kev?
Well, I think that I really like the war and battle analogy for sure. I thought this year was a lot more complicated in order to determine winners and losers for a variety of reasons. First of all, the pricing of prospects was so high that it almost felt like all the contenders lost a little bit because they had to pay more than they did even last season. When you look at what happened last season and what players went for, and then you saw what Tiemann went for, or what Coburn went for, all these guys that teams desperately needed. It felt like all the contenders in some had to pay more than they normally would. And then the other complication I felt was it was hard to determine, okay, what was really a deadline move. I mean, do we count the Dubnyk January 2nd acquisition? Because if we do, the Minnesota Wild, like we've talked before, I don't think anybody will have the impact that he's had on the Minnesota Wild. Or do we go back a couple of weeks, 17 days? Do we pick up the Cody Franzen deal? Do we count that one? Do we just count what's happened in the 2 weeks, or do we do what the weekend? Is that the trade deadline? So it was really kind of complicated to sort out. We eventually just decided to break it down by the weekend. If you made a deal from Friday on, I put, because I had actually, as we went along, as my readers, that are also watching would know, I had an early shoppers rating as well, and so we just did, the winners from the weekend. I really felt, and this is the other, where I had mixed feelings. I think it's hard to sort out, but I did it, but I didn't feel good about it. Was the fact that you've got contenders who, what their objectives are. So I like the deal from the Rangers' perspective. They got Keith Yandel, who was the biggest difference maker, who moved, and he went to the right team because their defense is so good. It doesn't matter whether he's a great one-on-one defensive player. They got him because he's a great transition defenseman and really one of the best in the league and a terrific power play, point man. Now, saying that, I also had the Arizona Coyotes listed in my top 10 because, look what they got. They got Duclair. They've got a first-round pick, and because Duclair used to play with Domi, who they have, I thought they did really well. If you look at the moves they made since last weekend, they now have 2 picks in 2015 and 2 in 16. So, I'm troubled by the fact that I had both the Coyotes and Rangers, all in my top 10. I really think you almost have to separate those out. But
which is the battle in the war. That's exactly.
Yeah, it is. But we sort of lumped them together, and I thought a real sleeper for me was the Boston Bruins. Everybody was concentrating on, okay, Chris Stewart, or would they get Ryder? These are all rentals. And what did they do? They went out and got a younger player who had 12 goals in 50 games, gave up 2 second-round picks. Brett Connolly was a first-round pick. And, he could be a scorer for them for many, many years to come.
Yeah.
It's hard to rate that deal with what the Blackhawks did.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? They took a couple of rentals.
Right.
So it was very complicated to rate. I didn't rate the Bruins in my top 5, but I had them, in my top 10 just because I thought it was kind of a clever way to do it. It was thinking outside the box. I think you could sort of view Conley as a 15 to 20 goal guy. Probably it's a better pickup than getting, Chris Stewart, who's, been inconsistent. I was watching the telecast yesterday, and maybe you guys made reference to it, but I was really struck by one of the more dramatic advanced stat moments that I've seen is when they pointed out on the Sportsnet broadcast that on all of the, I don't know if it was all of them, but in the last few seasons on the teams he's been on, the team has always been more productive when Stewart wasn't on the ice. That it wasn't just Buffalo. And then when Stewart came on and was interviewed, and I don't remember who asked him, I think it was Nick Kyprios, asked him whether or not it was fair that for him to be categorized as inconsistent. He said, yeah, I was. He fessed up to it. He owned up to his inconsistency. So it was a really fascinating and difficult day to sort of analyze because of all the different parts and the way it broke down and the teams moving earlier. And I think ultimately most teams got some help, but they paid a heavy price to do it, I thought.
I mean, Kevin, the thing is, I other than the Wisniewski move, I didn't see one real, and Yandel, I didn't see a real impact move. It was a lot of tinkering moves. I mean, I agree with you in regards to Boston. I think Connolly for the second round picks that essentially they got from the Islanders in the Boychuk deal, that they flipped it for a winger in his early 20s who, is making $850,000 and probably won't make a ton on a bridge deal. That makes financial sense for the Bruins, who are cap strapped, and also doing the deal that they did with Colorado, getting Maxime Talbot and only having to pay 50% of his salary, and he's under contract for next year, with them having the expiring contracts of Soderberg, Campbell, and Danny Paille. I mean, that's one veteran guy who they can put in their bottom six, who's had playoff success, who is a good ad. So I think, with the limitations that Peter Chiarelli had, I think he did a pretty good job. But the thing is that I saw a couple deals that I'm still shaking my head at, and I understand why teams that are in a position to go for it now will go above and beyond to take that extra step to get the player that they think is the one key player to win. But giving up a 1, a 3 in Radko Gudas for Braden Coburn on the part of the Tampa Bay Lightning. I know the organization is chock full of prospects, but that's a dramatic overpayment for a guy like Braden Coburn. I think Braden Coburn's good. I just don't think he's worth a 1 and 3 and a decent NHL defenseman in Radko Gudas. And I also think that Anaheim got a steal in Wisniewski. I think Columbus did badly on that deal because Rene Bourque, he was sent through waivers. He's making almost over $3 million next year, and he's been an inconsistent player his entire career. And they got a second-round pick and William Karlsson for Wisniewski, who, I think is going to really help Anaheim. He's a good power play defenseman, and he's been there before, so he's a known commodity. I don't understand why, what Columbus was doing in that deal.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things to talk about with what you just said there. And I mean, just quickly on the Coburn thing, I thought a lot about this too, because I was shocked by the amount they got back for Braden Coburn, and I watch Coburn play a lot, and I like Coburn. But what it shows, honestly, is how valuable just serviceable defensemen are. Like guys who you can count on. Coburn is a top 4 defenseman. He's definitely a top 4 defenseman. He's not a top 2 defenseman, but he's a top 4 defenseman. And he's got speed, and he's relatively young, and he's got potential. Still, at this point, I guess you can call it potential. But yeah, I mean, I thought to get a first-round pick for him, I never would have predicted, and never in a million years. And then to get a third on top of it and a player, that was crazy to me. I mean,
and a good player.
And a half-decent player, yeah. I mean, and a player who's played with Voracek before, and is friends with Voracek, and knows, in Gudas, they got a guy that they went to Voracek. Voracek's like, yeah, this guy, he's much better than they're giving him credit for. He's the guy they can, this is something that they thought about. So to me, that's intriguing. I mean, that's definitely intriguing. But I think the way I want to approach today's show is from this angle, because there are so many different angles we can go from. Let's talk about what team now has the best chance of winning a Stanley Cup, based on what we've talked about, but based on what's happened. So tomorrow we'll get into the other teams. We'll get into the teams that have won the war. We'll talk about the teams who are like the Arizonas and the Flyers to a degree, and teams like that who got back players or things for long term. But who now? I mean, because Boston did make a good deal, but they didn't. Why it's hard to classify this is they didn't really get closer to winning a Stanley Cup from that deal, perhaps.
Right.
I mean, I guess you could. It's a better trade. If it was in the middle of the season, you'd be like, "Wow, that's a great trade they just made." But on trade deadline day, in my mind, it's about trying to win a Stanley Cup, right? Or about trying to get into the playoffs or achieving your goals. But let's just go with the Stanley Cup. So we'll look at the top teams.
Well,
No,
I think we have to start with the Rangers. I mean, getting Yandel, getting Zuccarello signed to a 4-year deal
Right.
for reasonable money. They shook up a lot of their bottom forwards by moving out guys like Stempniak. They really didn't give up a lot. Duclair was not playing for them. John Moore was a bottom six, a bottom pairing defenseman, so they didn't give up a lot to get Yandel other than future draft picks. So they didn't mess with the current team that they had, but they add Yandel, who is a difference maker on the blue line. And I would assume that they're doing this with the thought that Lundqvist is going to be back 100% before the playoffs. And if that's the case,
Well, for sure.
yeah, they went all in. I think that for the next 2 or 3 years, while Nash is under contract, while Lundqvist is in his prime, while they have all their core defensemen locked up, that they are going to be perennial top-level Stanley Cup contenders coming out of the East. And I think they have a good chance to get back to the final this year.
It was gutsy, and I think that it was the gutsiest move. The Yandel move was the gutsiest move of the day. Give him that. That was the one that took the most gumption to make but they did set themselves up for a while. They do have a team that's potentially going to be in that window for a couple years now too. The key players are there for the next 3 or 4 years. Zuccarello signing is just as important as Yandel to me. So they get a lot there. Kevin, what are your thoughts on the top team maybe?
Well, I couldn't agree more with both of you on this. Like the Zuccarello signing, if you look what Larry Brooks reported on Friday, they were going to move him. He wanted too much money, and it wasn't going to get done. And they went from there to signing him for $4.5 million on average, which is a really good number for them. Getting Keith Yandel. I mean, their defense now. Let's look at this. Is McDonough, Stahl, Girardi, Klein, Dan Boyle, and Keith Yandel.
Yeah.
That is a skillful defense. And as I mentioned before, what I really like about this trade is that we all know Yandel comes with some warts. He's not a particularly strong defensive player. I think he's a little better than people give him credit for. But I was embedded with the Olympic selection process, and at one point they broke his defensive game down on tape, and I was able to watch it with the members of the selection committee. And he takes chances, and he sometimes looks a little disengaged defensively. But that's the price you pay when you get a guy of his offensive talent, because how many people can move the puck the way he can? Not many. Not many people can join the rush. So I like the Rangers' chances. Probably we've talked in the past about the way Nash has played, and he's really a different player. I think, as I mentioned, signing Zuccarello, it seems like a bigger trade. Seems like a trade because it looked like they were going to lose him. And then, even Talbot. I mean, I know Russ Cohen didn't like him, but if you look at his numbers, I've been watching him closely. It's what you would expect. I saw yesterday, which is really kind of fascinating on television. Someone now has broken it down to where they believe the a quality start for a goalie, and maybe this was out there already and I just hadn't caught up with it, but is a .917 save percentage in any game. If you have a .917 save percentage in a game, you've had a quality start according to these
Really?
starts. Yeah. Well, Talbot is at a .917, which puts him, and Lundqvist is a .922. There are 0.2 of a goal difference in the goals against average, and you know what? Talbot's sample is now significant. He's played well over 20 games. So, my point is that this team is good, and it's not all about Lundqvist anymore.
Yeah.
So I like what the Rangers did. I think their depth up front is better. They learned a lot, I think, from losing last season. So I thought they were a big winner yesterday. And I think probably they did the most. I like Anaheim too. We'll talk about them, but what move was big. They did exactly what they needed to do. And Fleischmann could be underrated. I know you have your doubts, and I think it could go either way. But if he does what he's supposed to do for Anaheim, then their offense should be okay as well.
It's funny. I've been on Fleischmann's side. I've been basically a proponent of Fleischmann, but not at the price they paid, and not for that much money. I mean, I really think Fleischmann's a good player, but it is one of those guys where, and obviously this is a Boudreau situation, right? Where Boudreau had him before and he wants him there, and now it's funny. You guys have picked both picked the Rangers. I have 6 teams before the Rangers that I think are closer to winning the Stanley Cup, based on this. I think they did a good job. I think Yandel's good, but I still I really I just have to go with and it's obvious, but I really have to go with Chicago. I mean, off the top, and then watching them play last night, they were really good. I mean, and this is a team that they have, and they lost Patrick Kane, but.
Let me ask you this though: are we picking the team we think is going to win the cup, or the team that we thought that did the most yesterday to get them to win the cup?
The team we thought that did that gets. Or yeah, the definition is the team that gets closer to winning a Stanley Cup by what they do yesterday, right? Okay,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I think before.
That's a different thing,
Yeah, I mean.
Okay, so maybe all right. This is so hard to define. This whole thing is hard. Winners and losers. I'm picking. We got the team that I think, based on what they did yesterday. Or based on what they did over the weekend, we'll say, or over the entire trade even period, is close to winning a Stanley Cup. I mean, with Chicago. Given that question, I threw Chicago out as my and my second team is Montreal. Like I think Montreal is the second team there.
I completely disagree with. Well, first of all, Chicago made up the difference that they lost with Kane by getting Vermette by improving.
Yeah, but this is the thing, okay? If they did make up the difference, but let's just pretend Chicago's a team that never had Patrick Kane. Okay, let's just pretend they're a team that has Jonathan Toews as their top player, and that's all they have. But they've got a great defense. Obviously, they've got a couple other. They've got Brendan Saad. They've got Corey Crawford. They're a good, solid team. Forget about Patrick Kane. They went out and they got Vermette and Timonen, and now, yes, to me that gets them far. Now all that said, also they end up getting Patrick Kane back if they make it to the third round of the playoffs or so. So
assuming Timonen is going to stay healthy and play, assuming Vermette is a quality add. He cost a first-round pick, so he should be. But to me, it's I don't think you can ignore the fact that Kane is one of the best players in the league, and that is a dramatic loss. I mean, if he comes back, if they can get through the Central Division and they can get to the conference final and Kane returns, then I think then the additions that they made at the deadline help them get to that point. But I don't think they're going to win it without Patrick Kane being a contributor. Now, as for Montreal, I think I considered Montreal one of the failures of the deadline in the sense that they didn't get the scoring that I think they needed. Petrie is a solid defenseman. They didn't give up a lot for him, and they needed to bolster their blue line, no doubt. But the big addition for them up front was Torrey Mitchell. And Torrey Mitchell is at best a third-line guy, probably a fourth-line guy.
I'm also counting Smith Pelly in this equation.
Yeah, I'm not. And to me, Smith Pelly.
That was a trade deadline move. I mean, to me, the trade deadline started with the Evander Kane trade. Like but this is again,
that was a long time ago. Yeah.
It was a long time ago, but it was a trade that happened because the trade deadline was coming. Okay, that was it. They had to make that move. Like I'm thinking, there was a deadline, so they made that move. That move just doesn't happen.
But to me, they didn't change the one aspect that we said coming into the deadline was the fact that they are going to have to rely on Carey Price standing on his head to win. Now, I don't think they're going to need their power play to click. They're going to need people like Dale Weiss to score big goals. They didn't add a difference maker at the deadline, and if they had brought in a forward like a Yakupov, like you were mentioning yesterday, or a Joffrey Lupul, or somebody like that, that would have made sense, and I would have given them an A if they would have brought in an offensive player, but they didn't, and I think they're going to have trouble getting by Detroit or getting by Tampa in the Atlantic Division.
It's really interesting, but everything that's come out of Mike's mouth today, I've agreed with. I still think Montreal is an exceptional team. I think they got an excellent chance of being the finalist in the Eastern Conference. They've been good in net, and they've been good defensively the whole season. And they added, 3 character guys yesterday. I mean, all those guys are known for being, good in the dressing room, but. What is their one weakness that everybody has identified, and that is they're among the lower 7 teams in goal scoring. Now, defense and goaltending win, but you still have to score some goals in the playoffs, and really, they haven't really addressed that. Even Smith Pelly has potential there. He's been a scorer, but he's not really been a proven scorer. Like I think Vermette would have been a better, acquisition there, or maybe even bringing in another guy who has some history, like Eric Cole. Going down that street again. That would have been good. But they could have really used a little more scoring. There's no doubt about it. Now, I wouldn't say they were a failure. Maybe I disagree a little bit with Mike, but I didn't think they did as much to improve their teams as other teams did. The Petrie acquisition was fine, but the drum beat yesterday. One of the things you heard, behind the scenes, is that most of the teams saw Petrie as an average defenseman. That you'd be happy to have him, but he was the fallback position for most of the teams, not the primary one. So, I know what the point you're making is. Montreal's team, as I've said, has, in my mind, been the most consistent team. Even more consistent than Nashville, who's also been incredibly consistent.
Yeah. I think, I agree. I think that, though, why I see Bergevin not doing this is because this is a team that is really built on chemistry. This Montreal team, and if you bring in a big name into this team, that's a problem. I think that could potentially be an issue, and I think that's why they strayed away from it.
But there weren't really any big names out there,
right?
In that regard, and just let me go over to Chicago a little bit too. I like what they did. Patrick Kane's loss, you can't even really address that. No. He is such a valuable player, and he has such a history of performing in big games that you just have to set that aside. And I like the way Mike presented that with the idea of, okay, well, what did they do? They added a really good player in Vermette, who's a good two-way player, and Tiemann. And now, here's the thing about Tiemann. I like that move because I like him. As I said, I think he's sort of a it's a little bit like Brian Rafalski was when he came to Detroit a few years ago. But the drumbeat about him yesterday was, hey, we don't even know where his game is at. And that's true. So it's hard really even to evaluate. I mean, I like the moves, and I thought Stan Bowman did a really good job. He thought outside the box a little bit and didn't get caught up in the other negotiations for the players that everybody was talking about, and he went for a guy that was a little bit more of a roll of the dice, but did okay. But he still ended up paying a pretty big price for him, and that's the theme yesterday.
Yeah, no, that is the theme, and it pained me to put Chicago and Montreal at the top of this list. These are two organizations that I haven't agreed with much of what they've done in the past. I mean, these are two organizations I feel like I felt like Chicago hasn't been fair to a lot of players. I've heard a lot of horror stories about playing for the Blackhawks. Montreal, I feel, although I'm not a big fan of Terrien, Bergevin's hard not to be a fan of. He's done a great job, but I think that when I think about moving forward, now my third team on my list was LA. Who and I still think Sekera is the perfect move. I think we talked about this last week, that they addressed their move, and that they addressed the one thing they needed, and they found the best player to fill that need, and they did it, and they got the guy, and they're solid and they're good, and there really is no downside to what they did. I wrote a downside to all these teams in my blog, but my fourth team was the Islanders. Now, my reason for this is going to sound like beating the old drum, but the Canadiens and Nashville Predators didn't get Michael Neuwirth, and they did, right? And that, to me, could potentially be a huge mistake for either the Canadiens or the Predators. And the Islanders realized it. Now, Gar Snow, who was a backup goalie in the NHL and came in the playoffs and helped the Flyers win a playoff series in one game against the Pittsburgh Penguins that he had to play, knows exactly the scenario we're talking about here. And he's looking at a lock, and so he went out and he got Michael Neuwirth, which I think could potentially be a huge deal moving down the line.
I almost think that that deal was more to get out of the second year of Chad Johnson's contract than Neuwirth. I mean, I disagree. And Kevin, I went off on Eck yesterday because of the point that he's continually made about Pekka Rinne and Carey Price, and I continue to say that if those guys go down, that Montreal and Nashville.
All right, I want to get into this one more time. Sorry, wait. I got control. I'm taking control of the show for a second.
Dude, it's your show.
I'm sorry, I never do this, but I'm going to do it right now. I've thought about this a lot. This whole concept of, okay, the Predators, and I've thought about these three teams, the Islanders, the Canadiens, and the Predators. And if I'm going to put Michael Neuwirth as the backup goalie on one of those 3 teams, and their starting goalie goes down, which one of those 3 teams has the best shot of winning a Stanley Cup? And it's the Predators, hands down. It is.
Yeah,
what do you think? I mean, the Predators have the better shot than the Canadiens or the Islanders if they lose their top goalie.
But which one of those 3 teams has the weakest starting goaltender of the 3? The Islanders.
No, I mean, they're all 3 of them are good this year. That's hard to.
I'm not saying that they're not all 3 of them are good.
Mike's right.
Okay, well, Halak is the weakest, but you're not going to pull Halak. They're going to go as far as Halak can go.
No, I agree completely, but
but the Predators are strong enough that they actually could still win without Rene, because they actually are the team that has the most depth. They have the best defense of those teams. They have the best. So they are the one team that could actually win with a backup goalie. So I disagree with this whole concept of they're not going to win anything.
Yeah, but they won. But they won with Carter Hutton, and they won. And
not
Carter
not in the playoffs. I'm sorry. This is the playoffs we're talking about. It's totally different. Kevin, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just not buying it. I buy the whole idea that you're not going to win. I mean, I like the move from the Islanders' perspective, but you're not going to win the cup with your backup goalie. There's no historical evidence that that's true. If there's been a guy that's not started out the goalie, there's been special circumstances. This is
a special circumstance. I mean, if Brady goes down, that's
no. I'm not aware of any straight injury situations where the guy would have brought in. And I think if you make the same you can, if you accept your argument, I think you could say that they could win with Carter Hutton then. But if you're arguing, do I like Neuvo better than Carter Hutton? I guess I do. But
if you're in a playoff game and you got to win, and those are your 2 goalies, who are you going to play? I mean, it's pretty. I mean, you're in a playoff game.
But I see your point in that regard. But those kind of arguments come in all the time. If you're saying that, then there were several players yesterday that were better than other players on Nashville's roster. Why didn't they go out and get them?
No, I know, but that's not a goalie. This is a league about goalies. Goalies are more important.
But they got a goalie. He's there, he's in, and but I like the Islanders' move. I said that yesterday to folks. Because it down the stretch, if you're trying to hold on to your spot, you want a better backup goalie. He has played exceptionally well this season. Mike's made the point that the Buffalo fans were worried that he was playing too well. So why not have him? Because you're competing with teams trying to hold on to your spot. He's better than Johnson. I buy it, but not enough to make a blanket statement and say every team who's a contender should always go out, and if there's a better backup goalie out there, they should invest assets in order to do that. I'm just not willing to do that.
Now, going away from the goaltender debate that I won. Tyler Kennedy was an effective ad for the Islanders. I mean, I think that.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
Especially with Grabowski having, he's had 2 concussions, and I think he's currently still out of the lineup. Kennedy has playoff experience. He's a decent 2-way forward. He can play the wing, can play center. So a good versatile forward that they got for relatively cheap. And I think that was a good move. And I think getting Neuwirth was a good move too, because they may, need to sit Halak down a couple times for the playoffs and not load a lot of games on him. And and he's a viable option if they need to go to somebody else if Halak has a bad game. So
I watched the Montreal Canadiens last year. I mean, were you guys not when Tokarski was thrown into goal and the Canadiens? I mean, that's what the argument keeps coming back to me. It's like Montreal had a precedent here. It's not even like we're throwing a hypothetical at Montreal. This is exactly what happened.
But my point is this: if Neuwirth had been the goalie last year, would we thought that their chances are significantly improved because he's in there? I don't think we would have. I
would have. I definitely would have, because Neuwirth has shown in the playoffs he can play, and Neuwirth is a really good goalie. He's a potentially he's going to go back to Buffalo in my opinion and start there, and he's a serious goalie. He's not. I mean, there are backups and there are starters, and he has shown that he can win in the playoffs already. He's a way better option than Tokarski or Budaj.
But Montreal benefited in the first round last year from a team that had lost their goaltender in Ben Bishop and had Anders Lindback as their backup goaltender. So they got through the first round on that alone.
Again?
Yeah.
Now you're going to tell us that Neuvo could have beaten Carey Price? I don't think so.
No, maybe not. No, I agree with you on that one, but that
supports my argument because I'm saying that if you lose your number one goaltender going into the playoffs, you are done.
No, you're not. See, that's completely. There are more than 30 starting goalies in the NHL. You just have to find the other starting goalies that are playing as backup right now and bring them in. Neuwirth is one of those guys.
I will tell you the only team right now in the NHL who I think could survive losing their starting goaltender in the playoffs and potentially still win, and that is the LA Kings with Martin Jones.
I totally disagree that they could win without. I don't think there's a chance in hell that they would win without their starting goalie.
And that's not lowering the value of Jonathan Quick because I think Jonathan Quick is a phenomenal goaltender, but I think the LA Kings play enough of a solid defensive style that they could get through the playoffs with Martin Jones as
both the times they won a Stanley Cup, it was mainly because of Jonathan Quick. So I have a really that to me, but to see that they don't have the Predators team in front of them. I'm just throwing the team. I don't know. Anyway, let's Josh. I'm sorry, I've been ignoring you. You have something you want to bring to the table. Sorry about that. Let's move on. I'll never win this argument until, of course, we see I'll win it later when I'm justified.
I wanted to throw at you guys, and I had the discussion yesterday with Elliot Friedman as well last night after the deadline. I wanted to ask each one of you who you feel was the happiest yesterday with their trade, where they were traded. Because if you look at the guys that were traded, you would imagine that quite a few of them were pretty happy to be traded yesterday. Usually, sometimes that's not the case when guys are traded. But yesterday, there were a lot of happy guys yesterday that were moved.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Good question. I think you got to start with Anton Vermette. I mean, it's like, he goes from Arizona to Chicago. I mean, that's a pretty good bet. I mean, you're going to a team that is definitely one of the top 3 contenders in the Chicago Blackhawks, and in my opinion, even without Patrick Kane, one of the top 3 contenders. Because I think that if we had never had Patrick Kane and we looked at Chicago's lineup individually, we would still. I mean, we know what Patrick Kane has done for them, but they still win a lot of games when Patrick Kane doesn't score goals. They are a good. This is the first year that Patrick Kane's been this kind of scoring machine. He's been good. He's always been clutch, but this is like this first time he's been there. But I think it has to start and end it. And for Matt. I mean,
I was gonna make the blanket statement of anybody that was traded by Arizona, Buffalo, or Toronto to teams above them in the standings. Because I mean, Torrey Mitchell went to his hometown in Montreal. Stewart went to Minnesota. We know that Neuwirth went to the Islanders, and then Mahalik and Olli Jokinen went to St. Louis, and Holzer.
Franzen was pretty happy to go to Nashville, from what I was told. I mean, that was definitely a good move.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm just
I'm going to go with what is maybe the obvious choice. I'm going to go with Leopold. If we're to believe his daughter, that letter was written in January. But most of us who travel for a living, and I know, Eck, you can relate to this, when you're, the description by her about her dad living out of a suitcase, an older player with a young team, and he obviously is very close with his family. I understood that. I travel, and when my kids were young and you're gone for 2 months, it's hard. So when I read that, it really sort of brought home. We forget that sometimes. I bet he's pretty darn happy that he's reunited with his family in Minnesota. So I'll just choose that one, just because I was reading the hot story yesterday, and now he's living with his family again. So he's probably pretty happy.
Yeah, that won the trade deadline. I have to talk to many people in Minnesota about what they were aware of as far as that goes. I mean, I'm sure it's been talked to already, but.
Yeah, they didn't know. We had our social media writer talk to them afterward. They did not know about the letter, but they were certainly cognizant that he was a Minnesota guy. And we all, when we speculate about where people go, always bring up when somebody's going to their hometown, because I think GMs look at that and say, hey, this could be a good thing. He could be happy coming home to his, he'll play better because he's content. We all know how that works. I mean, the same when that Minnesota Wild got Vanek. Remember, everybody said the reason that was going to work is because he had a home there. His wife was from there. Ryan Suter went there because his wife was from there. So it makes
Marty
a lot
St.
of sense.
Louis and the Rangers too is the same situation.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Well, the
we've reached the point in professional sports where the money is always going to be there. It's not a question of whether or not you're going to get your dollars, because somebody will give you the dollars. For a lot of players now, it's about, okay, what positively affects my life? And oftentimes that has something to do with making the wife happy. She's home while you're traveling about. So in this case, I think everybody in the Leopold family, from the letter, it sounds like they're happy that Leopold is back in Minnesota.
I thought the same exact thing. I mean, this year I've been home a lot more than I've ever been because of with family issues here, with my son and all that stuff. I completely agree. When I read that, when we heard about that letter yesterday, it was just holy cow, just kind of struck you down.
And Leopold and Eric Brewer, who was moved to Toronto yesterday, hold the distinction of two players who are being paid by three different teams this year, because Leopold was moved from St. Louis to Columbus, and St. Louis retained salary. Now he is traded to Minnesota, and Brewer was traded from Tampa to Anaheim to Toronto, and they retained salary in his deal. So that he is essentially being paid by three teams.
It's got to suck for his accountant at tax time. I mean, you got to pay different kinds of taxes. You got to pay taxes in 3 states. Think about it. It's just like,
and don't forget, a lot of people don't realize this, but players have to pay in city taxes when they play, and and that's complicated as well. You got to figure out, okay, well, they played in Philadelphia. I don't know how many.
Yeah, Philadelphia's the worst. People hate Philadelphia for that reason, because we have the city wage tax. That's why Philadelphia's been struggling for all these years. Josh?
Yeah, and actually, a couple things I want to say, and broadcasters have to pay city tax as well, because I know that when you're on the road, apparently you have to file a tax return in each state. I didn't know that, but yeah, didn't know if you guys knew that or not. But,
no, that's not. Man, I hate taxes. That just makes me cringe with thoughts. Mm-hmm.
But back to the deadline, guys. There's a few that I could think of. I mean, you named the majority of the ones that we were talking about would be happy about the move. But a couple other people that I feel that would be happy. Ben Lovejoy, you got to think that he was pretty happy to go back to Pittsburgh. A lot of people, even in the locker room, wanted him back. I saw a couple stories that apparently a lot of the players. I don't know if this is true. And Kevin, this might be something to look into. But someone said that Rutherford asked the players, "Is there someone that you feel that you guys would like us to bring in?" And a lot of the players said, "We'd love Lovejoy back." And I don't know if there's any truth to that or not, but maybe something to look into. But I know a lot of the players were very happy yesterday when he went back to Pittsburgh, because he was a very well-liked guy in that locker room when Ben Lovejoy was there. So that's one guy for sure that I would think was pretty happy yesterday. Olli Jokinen, I spoke. I mean, for those that don't know, on trading deadline day, I'm always talking to these players because my job is to get these guys on the air after they're traded. And more times than not, they're not happy when I'm telling them that they've been traded. I've had a lot of people drop F-bombs. I've had people say, "You got to call me back. I need to call my agent right now."
You're the first person who's telling them sometimes, Josh, huh?
Exactly. So there's been a lot of upset people when this has happened. But yesterday, I could some of the guys, when I was calling, I could feel like the smile through the telephone. Michael Norvere was very happy yesterday about going to New York, and an interesting thing is Norvere was traded for Halak, so he's actually going to be able to play with Halak now in New York. Other guys that were happy, Olli Jokinen was very happy, but who wouldn't want to be happy to get out of what's going on here? Olli Jokinen traded from a very good hockey team in the Winnipeg Jets to a team that is terrible right now. Well, been terrible all year.
From the Predators. He went from the Predators, right? So he went from the Predators.
Yeah, sorry. Went from the Predators to, what did I say?
Jets.
Oh, sorry. I don't
Jets at 1.2, I think. But
so the Predators to the Leafs to now St. Louis. So now he's back in the playoff picture. So he was pretty happy yesterday. Yeah. And here's a little note for you guys. How about this? For the third consecutive, and no one talked about this, the third consecutive trading deadline, I had to call. Well, they wouldn't be talking about that, but they'd be talking about Corey Conacher was involved in the third trading deadline. Last year, he was picked off waivers, and the year before that, he was traded by the Tampa Bay Lightning. So this is the third consecutive year that Corey Conacher has been moved, if you will, at the deadline.
Wow, that's crazy.
So you're like the Grim Reaper to Corey Conacher.
He's like, oh.
Corey Conacher, there's a funny story. The first time when he was traded from Tampa to Ottawa, I called Corey and said, Corey, I want to get you on right now on Sportsnet for the trade. What trade? You were just traded. What are you talking about? You were traded to Ottawa. Are you kidding me? I'm like, no. He's like, call me back. So then I called him back 5 minutes later, and he's like, yeah, I'll come on. And he wasn't very happy. So then last year, when he was picked off waivers, I called him like, Corey, you know you were claimed, right? I was? Yeah. So this year when I called him, he answers the phone. He's like, I know this time. So
he finally wised up and started watching the TV. So there you go.
Players are dreading their calls from Josh Rimmer more than they are their GMs at this time of year.
Yeah.
Neuber, by the way, was eating sushi when he saw on television that he was traded. So
apparently Corbinian Holzer didn't know because he saw his name on TV and saw the Anaheim Ducks logo on the TV, and he told his girlfriend he got traded to some team with a golden D. He didn't know what team it was. So, you know, but you know.
Have we gotten past the point now where players can expect to be told by their GMs before they find out on television? I mean, it feels like we've reached that point where.
Well, did anyone?
Go ahead, Kev.
Look at the Colbert situation where he was traded at 3 o'clock in the morning, and he woke up and he noticed he was checking on his child, and he happened to look over his phone and saw that it had blown up with some text messages and stuff, and that's how he found out. He at 6:30 in the morning he looked at his phone. So I mean, it's not like yeah. What I want to know is who was in the central registry office did they call up Bill Daly and wake him up? Did I know
they're paid well?
Say Bill.
Who's there? They must have an intern working the night shift or something, right? Like, I mean, that's all I can think of. I mean, and just a special shout out to Twitter to all the folks out there who were pissed off when I wrote at 6:30 in the morning that that he had been traded on Twitter, and people were like, "You're freaking 3 hours late." I'm like, "Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's 6 a.m. I don't think I have to report. I mean, good God, sorry.
Yes, somebody woke me up with a text at 4:15 in the morning telling me that trade happened. Josh,
was it me? Yeah, it was me. Oh yeah, sorry. But
what were you doing up at 4 o'clock in the morning?
I had to be at Sportsnet at 5 a.m., so I was up at 3:30 a.m. And I waited until 4 to text.
I love the Twitter people on that thing. I'm like, oh, you're late to the party. I'm like, holy hell, man.
Did you guys see Bob Murray's comments yesterday? He
No.
was very upset that someone, and I'm guessing one of the networks, called Ben Lovejoy to tell him he was traded. He was very pissed off and had some very pointed comments toward the people that told Ben Lovejoy that he was traded. And he said in the comments that in his quotes that I'm very pissed off that someone told Ben that he was traded before I had an opportunity to talk to him. He was very angry about it.
Well, yeah, that's crazy. Well, Tampa came with the deal to Hextall, and I can imagine Hextall like 2:30 in the morning saying, like, wait a second, yeah, I'm going to take this deal. It's not like, we'll wait till 6 and talk about it then. No, he's 2:30 in the morning. He took that trade in there, and that was that. That you take that kind of trade when you get it, whenever it's offered. Because in the past they would say, okay, let's talk about it in the morning, and we'll talk about
Well, tomorrow, Eck, we should talk about the teams that were in full sell mode and who maybe.
That's exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah.
And that'll be good. I don't think there's much news today, Josh. Really, is there?
Just a couple things I want to point out. Doug Wilson making a comment today, speaking with the media this morning, saying he never will ask Joe Thornton or Patrick Marleau to waive their no-trade clause. They have to come to him.
Okay.
Okay. So when he banishes them to the practice facility and tells them they're not going to play, that they can.
Has that always been the case, or is this a new theory? That's what I want to know. This sounds like a dad saying, I'm not going to tell you when you can use your cell phone again. You're going to have to come here and.
Brian Burke said the same thing in Toronto when he joined the Leafs, and they had all those they had Caberlet and a couple other players, and he said, I'm never going to ask these players to waive their no trade, but if they want to come to me and if they want out, then there you go. And I think Caberlet told him he was open to it, so that it ended up happening. But he doesn't want to be the bad guy and force him out of town. He wants the player to be to make that decision. But
I like Seidenberg's take on this whole thing, right? Seidenberg's like, yeah, I got no waive trade clause, but if you don't want me here, I'm getting out of here. I don't care. That's ridiculous. Continue, Josh.
Yeah, you know what? What we need to do is change that clause from no trade clause to
player's decision or something.
Yeah, because it's not really a no trade clause. It's what it really is players controlling their own destiny clause.
Yeah, exactly right. That is what it should be called, because those players are still discussed all the time.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah.
And a lot of players have that Seidenberg attitude that they're like, if you don't want me here, I'm out of here.
And rightfully so. I mean, why would you want to be employed with someone that doesn't want you? So.
Yeah. And the modified no trade clause can be renamed I don't want to go to Edmonton clause.
Right, something like that.
I thought one of the best story ideas coming down the stretch was Craig Custance, who did a story on the teams that are most on players I don't want to go on their list. So I thought that would be a clever story idea. So
that was interesting, and that of course changes over time too. But right now that's where it is.
But I mean, he said it was Edmonton and Winnipeg and Toronto and Buffalo, and I believe Ottawa was the fifth. So it was mostly Canadian markets, and Toronto was lumped in there. I think obviously because of the press scrutiny, which we'll talk about tomorrow about certain things.
Navy. Yep. What else do you got, Josh?
That's it, guys.
Okay. Yeah. So we're not really hitting the Toronto thing today. We'll put that. Obviously we talked about it a little bit beforehand, and I just don't think it's the. I don't. It's a lot of soap opera right now. There's a pissing match going on, and there's nothing to be gained from being in a pissing match. I mean, obviously, if you're into soap operas, you can feel free to follow the Maple Leafs on your own. But I really think there's so many exciting things that are happening right now in the rest of the league that we're gonna stay there. So let's do the NHL. We did this yesterday, Kevin. We did this while you weren't here again, and
who won?
And the New Jersey Devils won yesterday.
Oh, excellent.
That was kind of surprising. Because sorry. Now I have to say
really turning into a race too, guys. With the lottery pick. I mean, with obviously Columbus has lost, I think 5 or 6 in a row. The Leafs are losing. Buffalo, Edmonton. I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty good race here in the next month and a half.
Well, Bobrovsky is back tonight for Columbus, and Edmonton has played better. So I think it's a race between Buffalo and Arizona for 30th, and Arizona and Buffalo play twice in the month of March. So that's going to be
tickets available.
Yeah,
here we go. All right, so the winner today, because I have to turn my computer around because I'm not set up like I usually am here, but the winner today is the Phoenix Coyotes. Or Arizona Coyotes. Sorry, the Arizona Coyotes. People are still getting so mad at me for saying that. The Arizona Coyotes. With an 11.5% chance of winning the lottery, have won the lottery today. This is exactly going as planned for Mr. Maloney. Yeah. That's what he wants, right? I mean, I'm sorry to bore you, Kevin. Yep, that's what he wants, and there we go. So, guys, that's all. Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. See you.